Hey guys, welcome to Skills, and today we're going to be going over the fault-based grounds for divorce that we're going to be looking at next week in LFR and how the cases illustrate these particular rules. So, we're going to jump right into it. First, we're going to look at the fault-based divorce system, and we're going to look at the grounds for divorce. Adultery is going to be our first rule, and for adultery, you must prove by clear and convincing evidence that either you had an adulterous inclination coupled with the opportunity to consummate the inclination. So here, this is the standard, clear and convincing evidence, and then you have the two elements. And within this rule, inclination is defined as the infatuation with a particular person or the general adulterous propensity. And the plaintiff can prove this inclination either through A or B. Or, I'm sorry, one or two. The next ground for divorce that we're going to be looking at is cruel and inhumane treatment, physical or mental, this could be. Now, the plaintiff must show, if we're going to be seeking divorce on these grounds, that the cruel treatment caused by the partner to suffer great mental distress. Then we also go into defining what mental distress is. Mental distress, the plaintiff must show treatment caused partner to suffer great mental distress established by substantial and satisfactory evidence. So again, it's a little weird that it defined mental distress with the word mental distress, but that's what it's looking for. And here's just a little note. It says, it's not solely the defendant's conduct, but the effect of the conduct upon the plaintiff. And again, here's the standard, established by substantial and satisfactory evidence. Again, the cases are going to go into what all this means and how it actually all works in the real world. Next thing we're going to be looking at is abandonment. So abandonment is when your spouse abandons you for at least 1 year without your consent unless it's justified. So you're looking for some type of justification. So there's two types. We're talking about physical abandonment, as we see here. For physical abandonment, you must show a complete cessation of any and all cohabitation, whether living in the same residence or not. And this is really described as separate lives, not separate roofs. And remember, it's not broken by isolation, by isolated attempts at reconciliation. Again, the cases are going to go into it. Also, this is constructive abandonment, which you must show a withholding of sex. But the defendant but the defendant can raise justifications. Repeated refusal is not justifiable, but offensive and objectionable sex is. So again, the cases are probably going to go into the difference between physical abandonment and constructive abandonment in terms of withholding sex from your partner. Now we move in from those three fault-based grounds for divorce to now some defenses. First, condonation. You're condoning it, and you show this by a complete renewal of the marital relationship or a single act of sexual intercourse. And I think that's for adultery. And specifically for adultery, this is after knowledge or belief that adultery had been committed. So if you sleep with your partner again after they've committed adultery, then the court is going to look at that as condoning the act. Now, there are also specific adultery defenses that I want you guys to look at. First, the procurement with the conveyance of the plaintiff. It's really the threesome rule. If you have a threesome, then then that's going to be a defense that, hey, my wife was there, or, my partner was there. Obviously, forgiveness by the plaintiff, either affirmatively or voluntarily cohabitating after the person found out. And you're talking about 5 years within the discovery. So if you're under the 5-year period, but the person says, hey, I forgive you, or they voluntarily cohabitated with you, then you can raise the defense that, hey, you were forgiven, even though this act was committed, the plaintiff forgave you. Now we have the no forgiveness, if you have no forgiveness or voluntary cohabitation, but action is not commenced within 5 years. So this is just the statute of limitations. Even if you find out, you have up to 5 years to then file for divorce based on adultery, but if you don't, then your SOL, statute of limitations. And SOL means both blank out of luck, but in this instance, it means statute of limitations. And then the last ground for adultery is plaintiff was guilty too. Now this could also, you can also look at number 1 for the threesome rule for this, but here this is, I cheated as on my spouse, and then my spouse also cheated. And here you must have a witness who can testify. Maybe the person the spouse cheated with, maybe somebody who saw something, but they're just not going to take your word for it. You have to prove that, yes, the other person also cheated too. So again, these are the things that we're going to be looking at this week. The last part of it that we're going to be looking at is the no-fault divorce piece. And no-fault divorce is really just irreconcilable differences. So here you must show that the marriage is irreconcilably broken, right? And remember, this is based on a subjective standard, not objective facts. Again, this is just more or less the choice. I don't want to be married to this person. Nobody's at fault. I'm just out of here. It's just not going to happen. Here, the party subjectively decides the marriage is over. I don't want to be married, and there's no hope of reconciliation. The finality of it. And again, here you don't need any direct evidence of an affair or of any major disagreement. You just need to convince the court, or maybe even convince yourself, that this marriage is done. And this is kind of where most states are going to no-fault divorce. You have a choice to get in and let you choose to get out. So listen, I want to thank everybody for watching, and we're going to be doing this every Friday. We're going to be introducing you to the rules, and then the cases are going to illustrate how these rules are put in real life. For instance, the first case that we're going to be looking at next week is Lister v. Lister, and it's going to explain the evidence standards to prove adultery, and so forth and so forth. So a lot of these questions that you have now about these rules, just looking at them, will be answered next week. And again, this document is uploaded on Twin, so you guys can look through it, and as you read the cases, start understanding how the court reconcile what's convincing evidence, what's this inclination, how does it work, and what does it mean to be abandoned by your spouse. The court will define this a little bit more through the cases. So again, I want to thank you for watching, and I will see you next week in skills.